Hello, everybody. A little slow getting started. Willa, can you hear me okay? Hmm. Yeah. Stephanie asked me to tell you that she's not able to join us.
Okay. And can you hear me, Scott?
Oh, I hear you now. Yep.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you. She did email me also, and Rachel is running late. And Candy is here, but she can't turn on her video, so.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
So I think we're just waiting for Gabrielle. I haven't heard from her, so maybe I have 5:59, so we'll wait another minute or two.
Fair enough. Nice to see you, Phil and Toby.
Hello.
Hello.
I was going to come join you, but partway there, I realized I probably needed my laptop and I had to turn around.
Yep.
So,
It was raining.
yeah, it's raining pretty hard right over here right now.
Yep.
Gabrielle.
Hi, Gabrielle.
Greetings, everyone. How are you?
Hello.
I'm better now
Gabrielle.
that I got Kari to tell me how to start this meeting, and I just barely managed it.
Ooh,
I'd be lost without him.
thanks for being there.
No problem. Almost in my backyard.
And I think you're on your own today because Rachel's running late, so I think she's probably going straight home and joining by Zoom, but.
Yep.
Welcome everybody. So this is the Calais Development Review Board meeting, and it is being recorded. We're on Zoom, but just so everyone knows, it is also recorded. I thought we could start, we have two new members, Phil and Toby. And I thought it might be helpful. We've done this before where we just share a little bit about ourselves. So I thought my idea for this evening is we could go around, introduce ourselves, say where we live, and then name something we like about our neighborhood or where we live. So I'll start and I'll pass, say, to Scott, and then Scott can choose who he wants to pass to. So I am Willa Farrell. I live on Wheeler Road. And something I like about where I live is our neighbors, who are all dog friendly. We have two dogs, one of whom sometimes goes AWOL, but our neighbors are very understanding because they all have dogs, some of whom go AWOL. So something I appreciate about where I live. Scott, I know you were dealing with technology. Do you feel ready to go, or?
Yeah, much as ever. There was supposed to be a little button that I could click to start the recording. I haven't found it, but I'm making an audio recording.
When I logged on, it says it's recording.
Oh, excellent. Excellent.
Yeah.
I live in East Calais, end of a 1 mile dirt road in a house where I've lived for over 75 years. About a couple of weeks ago, Charlotte and I put the house on the market. So far it's not selling, but it's a big change.
It's huge.
Wow.
Yeah.
Who's
You've got,
next?
yeah, you choose, Scott, who you want to pass to.
Oh, good. Yes, Phil. What have you got to say?
Hi, I'm Phil. I had moved 3 times in the past 2 years, so a little bit different. I ended up in Calais. I live on the county road right across from Bliss Pond, big red barn there. Can't really miss it. And let's see. What do I like about my neighborhood? I really love to mountain bike, and I have mountain bike trails right by my house. I have any number of dirt roads to travel any different direction I want. I can go 15 miles, 25 miles, 5 miles. I just love that. And I'll go with Toby.
Toby Talbot. I live in Maple Corner, about a mile north of the Maple Corner store. Great little neighborhood. People walk around what we call the triangle all the time. Many wonderful neighbors and great community. And Gabrielle.
Hi, I'm Gabrielle. I live on the end of Long Meadow Hill Road, which is a left-hand turn if you're going north towards Maple Corner off of County Road. And I love the fact that we have a lot of trails very close to the house, and those trails link up to lots of other trails. And so there's just so much exploring, and I really enjoy that. So that's what I love.
You could pass to Candy.
I think that leaves me.
Yeah.
So I'm Candy. I live on Lightning Ridge Road, and our driveway is a half a mile long, so we don't have close neighbors, but the ones we do have are pretty amazing. We have a lot in common. Um, what I love, other than the neighbors, is the just the whole Calais feel, the environment, the woods, the trails, the people. It's been our home for well, we were in East Calais before since 1990. So long time. Doesn't seem like that long.
Thank you, Candy. Thanks, everybody else. And as I say, Rachel may be joining us, and Stephanie was not able to join us today. So the first order of business is to approve minutes. We have two sets. One are the minutes from July 15th, which was the joint meeting with the select board, and then our last regular meeting, which was October 10th. And we have 5 of us here who were at those meetings. So I would entertain a motion to approve if we should take them individually, just for ease of minute taking.
I move that we approve the minutes of July 15th.
I second.
Any discussion about those minutes? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 I didn't hear, I think I heard 5 ayes, so I think the motion carries. Thanks, Scott. And then October 10th.
Well, I'll move that we approve the minutes of October 10th, 2024.
Second.
Thanks, Gabrielle. Any suggested edits to those?
I have made just a few edits, but it was more grammatical than anything.
Okay,
So nothing with the content itself.
okay.
I made the suggestion in edit mode in the document.
And did you send those? I maybe you've sent them, but I didn't, or was that attached to your email that you sent earlier?
No, it's actually, I mean, I'm fine with moving forward with approving. It's
Okay.
like I said, it's grammatical more than the content itself. And
Okay,
you can take a look at it, but no, I can share back the document because I opened it in Google Drive.
okay, great, thank you.
Mhm.
So all those in favor then say aye.
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 Okay, so the motion carried, and we have approved those 2
Aye.
sets of minutes, and I'll send them on to the webmaster for posting on the website, and to Tegan for the records. So I wanted to give you a quick update. It's not very detailed update, but for Phil and Toby in particular, we have been talking as a group about doing training because most of us are relatively new members to the DRB. And the Vermont League of Cities and Towns provides, it's a 2-hour training. It's sort of a standard training they do on the role of a DRB, how to have effective hearings, how to write good decisions. And I did hear from the Wilmington DRB chair who their board participated in this training last May, and she was spoke very highly of the training, said it was very useful, and that the board really appreciated it. So I have put a request through the Vermont League of Cities and Town portal for this training to ask if they would be available to do it on our regular scheduled Wednesday in January, which I can't remember the exact date right now, but I haven't heard back. I meant to follow up today. I submitted it last Monday after the select board hearing meeting. So I will, as soon as I'll follow up tomorrow, see if I get a response. But that would be, and I guess I would recommend that we do that in person at the town hall. And then the other thing we had talked about for training was the web-based map systems that the state has. And Brian Voigt from the Central Vermont Regional Planning Commission has said he would come out and provide like a sort of hands-on training about how to use the web-based mapping system that the state hosts, provides, creates. And it's one where you can, and you may be familiar with it, but you can choose a particular part of the state, and then you can ask to see the wetlands or you know, different elevations. It's very detailed and there are many layers to it. And I know on a few occasions that we've looked at it, it was pretty helpful and helpful for applicants too. So my thinking, wanted to ask the group, if we were to have a 2-hour training in January with the league, are people prepared the next month to have another training, or would you rather wait until March? I don't know, what are people's appetite for some sort of training 2 months in a row?
I think training in February on the mapping sounds like a great idea. Building season's getting earlier and earlier, so we might as well get it out of the way before we have a hearing.
Is this something that would be available via Zoom, or is it an in-person training? I'm just thinking of February weather.
Yes,
So
no,
in
that's a good point. And true for January also. Brian suggested we do it in person. So I think we could always do snow dates, inclement weather dates. Toby, I think you were about
Yeah,
to.
so I'm good friends with John McCullough, the zoning administrator, and he is a wizard on maps and overlays. So as an immediate resource, anytime we need to have any of that stuff generated or put together, John's a great resource. I'm pretty familiar with the state A&R mapping with all the as
great.
well. So
It's good to have somebody who's knowledgeable on the board. Maybe we'll be turning to you in addition to John.
yeah, John's the A student. I'm just the B+ guy.
As long as you're above C, we can feel comfortable going to, right?
Yeah.
How would I find these resources, and do I have to sign up for them, or is it something that's freely available?
I can send you a link to the web-based mapping systems, because you could just go on, Phil, and especially with your background, you probably would figure it out pretty quickly. The training for the league, I haven't found anything online that really describes it, just what they sent me through the portal, but that would be, it would be for our board, mind you. There is a cost to that one for the town. It's $250. And once we settle on a date, Tegan is going to contact neighboring towns to see whether, you know, board members from another town might want to join us, in which case they could share the cost. But there'd be no formal registration. We'll just let people know, and we'll have the training.
Phil, I think if you go to the town website and there's a Calais interactive web map, I think that's right at the same place.
Okay.
So you can choose layers and stuff.
I have played with that,
that
one, so.
Yeah, so just go to the town website and go to the interactive map and see. You can play around with it there.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would be fine with the training in both months.
Gabrielle and Candy, what are your thoughts about training in January and February?
It just occurs to me, well, my very, very, very busy work season is January through May. And but I agreed to monthly DRB meetings, you know,
Mm.
to coalesce the group and get us trained and so forth.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't hurt my feelings if it was March instead of February, just to spread it out a little bit. And because those two trainings are not that closely interrelated to where, you know, one is about how a DRB should act and the other one is a tool for the DRB to use potentially. So I can live with February, but it wouldn't, you know, it doesn't seem like it would be bad to, because they're not like part one
Yeah.
and part two really
Yeah.
to separate a little more.
Okay,
I'd be fine with March too.
yeah,
Just not town meeting week, please.
right, yes. Well, why don't we wait and see what happens for the January training, and then we could just through email get it. Yeah, sort of check in about dates, whether we do it in February or March. And Brian from the Regional Planning Commission may well have an opinion too on what date works for him. So okay, so hey, we're actually right on time. So the plan was to spend the bulk of our hour, 40 minutes, on the rules of procedure and conflict of interest document, which I believe, I mean, I sent out. I hope everyone has had a chance to at least look at it. We as a group in August started discussing this, and we didn't get very far, as you could tell from what I sent out had track changes. And some of the, there's a typo already in what I sent you, was not that substantive, although we added local law and the concept of a perceived conflict of interest, not just actual. So given that we're a new group, Phil and Toby are new, I thought we would, I could share my screen and we could just walk through this document together. And people can, you know, either ask questions, say, and we might want to do a bit of wordsmithing, but if it gets, we could also say this needs work and then do more wordsmithing at a subsequent time. So let me share. Oh, the host is disabled participant screen sharing. So I don't know if Scott can allow me to.
So I went to the VLCT site and they do have a sort of a rules and procedures for boards that looks almost exactly like the language we have. And I think that's probably where it came from originally. So it might be important for us to see if there's an updated version from VLCT as a language that we start with, because there may be some changes they've made. The one I saw was from 2005. That's the last one I've seen. But maybe before we spend a lot of time on this, we ought to take a look at that VLCT version, latest version for it.
Maybe when I contact them about the training, I can also ask if there's somebody there who could look at our rules and see if, well, if they have a more updated version, or what they think of ours. Yes, Gabrielle.
So are you saying, Toby, was that you who said you saw a version from 2005? Where did you see that? Because this rules of procedure was adopted in 2021.
Right, but what I'm talking about is the VLCT version that they sent out to lots of towns. It's sort of the
Model.
Yeah, the model language, and probably a lot of it has references to state statute and all that their lawyers have already checked into and put into place for the particular references to definitions and rules of procedure in a hearing, that kind of stuff. So a lot of that is just legal stuff.
Right.
that a municipal board is required to perform at.
And as you say, Toby, I'm sure that Anne and the other members of the board used that as a template when they were creating this in 2021. And let me see if I can, it looks like I can, I just have to find the right document. Here. So maybe the caveat to this process is that before we make any final changes, we would make sure we're consistent with whatever current law is and what the league is recommending as a model. So I put a little note in here for check Vermont League of Cities and Town, but I'm gonna put track changes on, and we could go through and at least identify if there's anything that's confusing or people have questions about, or have immediate thoughts about changes. We wouldn't be making any final decisions this evening.
Right. So,
the first section is obviously we're following it in accordance with Vermont statute. There may be new provisions that we should be, so I can do a little note.
Sorry to interrupt, Willa. I'm just curious, is there something that, is there a reason that we're doing this? Is it like on a time, like do you do it every 2 years, or is it there's something that precipitated that?
No, it's a really good question, Phil. It was more, as a new DRB, we were looking at this and people had some questions. And I think there was some specific, I don't know, I think there was a specific question or concern or idea that one member or two had. I can't remember, maybe somebody else does. So we just thought, well, this is a good time for us as a newer group to at least read through this, and maybe we might not make substantive changes, or maybe we would.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
I can offer, I think, a little context, which is that my first DRB meeting was just sort of diving right into a hearing. And I actually had no idea how a DRB meeting would be conducted. And one of the key pieces, I think, is the identification in advance of the zoning regulations that are being called into play by a particular application. And I don't think that's anywhere in the rules of procedure. So then we just kind of wondered if, I think generally speaking, to review the rules of procedure for things like that, but then also to really think about it from the applicant's perspective and how well prepared are they, what materials are there for there. And so this is related to that conversation. I don't specifically remember what about the rules of procedure other than reviewing them for up-to-datedness would be helpful to us and to applicants.
I think the
Okay.
other part to that was about the person of or personal interest of a board member. And I don't remember what the case was, but it came up as, well, let's talk about what that means as a board member and having a personal interest, and then defining what that was.
and I think I mentioned this to Toby the other evening, but Phil, we've also, as a group, building off what Gabrielle said, talked about two other projects that come to my mind. One is creating a document that would be what to expect at your DRB hearing, that we would send out to applicants early on, and that would include, these are the zoning regulations that the DRB has identified to date, which we'll be looking at your proposal, so that people, because I think we've all had the experience of people coming and not being fully prepared, or both with like what the process is as well as what is in their application. And the other thing that Candy's agreed to work on is Well, the Planning Commission is the entity that is responsible for creating our town's zoning application. They're in the midst of redoing the town plan. And we thought we could start on like, what could a new zoning application look like? Are there changes that might make sense? Obviously, we wouldn't do that without Planning Commission or John as the zoning administrator's input. But we started one evening talking about, we could have a fillable PDF so that, things like it would be legible, those sorts of details. So this was sort of our starting place. I think we decided this document would be the good place to start. And from that, we would build out into these other initiatives that are all more around administration and how do we operate.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
And I looked at the sort of applications for DR permits that come from the zoning and planning. And a lot of them are pretty specific, which is great, and some of them are a little vague. So maybe that's the assistance to the applicants, is that we need to make sure that all of the information that we would be seeking in a certain type of application would be included on that application form.
Just things like, that the plan is to scale. We've had applications where the plan is not, the sketch is not to scale, and we've had to ask people. So we could even have like a checkbox, like, review your application to make sure these things are met. So to go back to this document, anybody have any thoughts about this section 2 policy? All we did here was some wordsmithing and adding local law so that we're in compliance with state, federal, and local law. Okay, I like the thumbs up. Then we have a definition section. If I go too fast, slow me down. We talked about, the other evening, I added these words, an actual or perceived conflict of interest, because we had a group talked about sometimes there's no conflict, but there might be a perception of a conflict. So I think we need to read this carefully to make sure that fits with the rest of the document, but I didn't want to lose at least the concept of the perception.
I would be cautious about us adding that to our definition of a conflict of
Okay.
interest,
Yep.
because there are times where someone else might perceive that one of us has a conflict,
Mhm.
but we agree that there is not an actual conflict and that
Okay.
that person can be objective in participating in the decision making. So I might actually think about like a separate definition of perceived conflict as something that somebody can raise, but if it doesn't meet this definition, it's not a real conflict. And so
Okay.
that person would not necessarily be expected to step aside. They might still decide to, right?
Mhm.
Because that is up to each of us to make that
Mhm.
decision. And hi, everybody. Sorry, I'm late. It was very hard to get out of Burlington this afternoon. So yeah, that's just, I agree
Yeah.
with you. We should keep that concept in the rules somewhere, but I don't know that we
Mhm.
necessarily want to expand our conflict of interest definition.
Definition.
Yeah.
That's a good point, Rachel. So I'm going to reject this and just I made a comment there and then whoops. I'm going to make you all nauseous scrolling back up. And then maybe when we go down farther through the document, we might see a good place for that. So welcome, Rachel. Glad you made it. So. And do you know, you probably know Toby. I don't know if you've met Phil.
I'm not sure. Hi, Phil. I'm Rachel.
Hello, nice to meet you.
Good to see you, Toby.
So I'm just gonna scroll to those first three statements about conflict of interest. Does anything jump out to people there that's confusing, disagree with?
It's a very difficult subject, and I think those statements make sense. They don't completely cover it, but it's almost impossible to cover it completely.
Mhm.
I'm certainly okay with that definition part, having those as a definition.
And it continues on to the fourth. I don't know, Rachel, have you thought, you were suggesting adding a separate definition, so maybe instead of after C, we could have a D,
Yeah,
or maybe a new D,
a 5.
5, maybe.
Yep.
Well, I think we want a new definition, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Or it could just be a rule out as part of this definition, right? Like a perceived conflict of interest is not within this definition. And a perceived conflict of interest is when an interested party states they believe a member has one of 1 through 4, but the board agrees that that is not the case, something along those lines.
so we can do wordsmithing, but so the board, so, and what your first phrase, I liked what you said, Rachel, so
A rule
something-
out,
rule out.
yeah, so it's kind of the defining in the negative. This is not a
Yeah.
perceived, this is not a conflict, whereas the
Yeah.
first are conflicts.
I
Rachel, did you
agree. Sorry, Scott, you go.
Rachel, did you say that it would have to be an interested person that would raise that issue?
I suppose it could be one of us as well, but who else would raise it? A party to the application?
Yeah, well, sometimes people at the hearing that are not, don't consider themselves interested
That's
persons.
true. Okay, so a party, an interested person, or another individual participating in the hearing?
Yep.
Or
We
anyone
just say
participating in
any
the hearing?
person,
Yeah,
any person. So I have I'm not sure where we would put this. I personally think that perceived conflicts of interest can be as important as actual conflicts of interest in terms of sort of
Mhm.
public trust in a process. So while a group may agree, we might agree that the perception is not, that we agree there's not actually a conflict. I could see that we might want to consider the perception and like as like if someone said that, Will, I think you have a conflict here and I disagreed, and even if the rest of the board agreed, that might be enough for me to decide to recuse myself because out of interest in ensuring that people had
Mhm.
trust in the process. And I'm not sure whether that is something relevant for like a document like this or just for me personally. I don't know what
So I
people's
think
thoughts
down
are.
in the section about conflicts of interest, not the definition, but the section about that, there
Yep.
is something about like the decision making around that and that it is the person's personal choice to recuse.
Right.
Mhm.
So it's not a requirement that the members
Requirement.
use themselves. But yes, that certainly would be encompassed if we agreed, okay, this is only a perceived conflict. You don't have to recuse yourself.
Yeah.
C1 there would still let us.
Yeah.
go ahead and recuse anyway.
When we had that hearing of the house without access on Jack Hill,
Mhm.
I brought up the fact that I was a contiguous landowner. I thought I was. Turns out I wasn't really.
Yeah.
But I mentioned that and said it might be perceived as a conflict, but said that I felt I could act without prejudice, and
Right.
the people accepted that.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I imagine, Scott, if Ben had said to you, I actually don't think you can,
Mhm.
that would have influenced how
Oh,
we
yeah.
might have proceeded,
Yeah,
right?
it would have influenced me too. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good point. So I remember last time we talked about this, we got into the conflict with the definitions at the beginning, but it's hard to separate talking
Yeah.
about definitions from the recusal process. So
Yeah.
maybe we just take a minute to like look at this recusal section C. So we're saying a board member shall recuse themselves if there's a conflict. And then be up in definitions, we would have said a perceived one is not an actual, we would rule out the perception.
Right.
And of course, there's nothing stopping anybody from recusing themselves based on whether it's actual or perceived.
Mhm.
Is there
Yeah.
anything else about this recusal section that is unclear or you think needs clarification?
So because this is also part of my professional life,
Mhm.
dealing with DRB hearings in other communities, I can say that number 2, we might be in good stead to clarify even further that you're not sitting with the board, you are not participating in the proceeding, you are not asking any questions
Okay,
of any of the participants.
Good.
Because there are other communities in our state who don't seem to view recusal as meaning you don't participate at all.
okay.
And that has caused some issues in other communities in our state.
If we added something like in any manner, would that
Yeah.
cover it?
That might do it. Yeah.
In any, okay. Sounds like you've had some fun meetings, Rachel.
Oh, it's been so fun. I'm loving the new job.
If there's some unknown conflict, we could take evidence if needed, have a deliberative session. And then we can adjourn the proceedings to a time certain. Okay. Feeling pretty good, everybody, about this?
Mhm. Yep.
Okay.
Looks
I'm
good.
gonna go back up top. So back in more under definitions, there's a definition of what a deliberative session is, which is a private, here it's named as a private session. When we met last time, I think we agreed that a deliberative session can, like a board, an entity can have a public deliberative session.
Yeah.
We talked about the challenges of that. And I think my sense and my memory, although I didn't take good notes and take any notes on this point, was that people felt comfortable leaving in this document the definition of a deliberative session is private to ensure that everybody on the board felt comfortable voicing their opinion, asking questions that they may feel, they should know the answer to.
That's what I recall, Willa.
I do as well. I agree. And I think we also talked about, even though the statute allows us to have both, that we as a board felt like we didn't need both in our rules. That if we were going to have a deliberative session, it was going to be private.
Good.
Phil and Toby as new members, does that fit with your comfort level and experience?
Yep, that's fine.
Works for me, yeah.
Okay. Then executive session, that's really defined in state law. So I don't think we can really change anything there. Ex parte communication, I'm assuming this is probably a pretty standard definition. Rachel, you might know as a lawyer.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yes, this is very standard.
Okay. And then interested person is defined in statute. I have no idea whether this has changed, so I could just make a little.
Yep.
So that's all then defined.
So I have a question about that because
Yes.
it says about having an interested parties mailing list. And if it so but if all those if all those categories are de facto interested persons, should the first thing be someone has to declare themselves an interested person to and participate in the hearing as an interested person or listen to the hearing as an interested person?
It might be
Yeah,
further
so-
down
Yeah,
in the document.
I think that's addressed later in the document. This is just a definition, who is eligible to be an interested party.
So here, under section 7, public hearings in order of business, D is so a review of the definition. And then there's a statement that only an interested person who has participated may take an appeal. And then it's like asking people to identify themselves. But I think, Gabrielle, you bring up a good point, because I remember one of the first hearings I participated in as a DRB member, there were people who wanted to speak who probably didn't meet the definition of an interested party. And the chair allowed people to speak out of, I think, a recognition that even if you may not meet the legal definition of an interested party, there's a time and a place for people to feel like they have a voice, which I personally agree with. And I haven't thought about that point as I've read through this. So maybe if people have similar thoughts, we should be thinking about it as we go through here.
I think my thought on it, we are a quasi judicial, and if you would go to a courtroom, the judge would not let somebody in the audience step forward unless they identified themselves as an interested party.
Mhm.
So I think you have to be careful about just opening up discussion to non-interested parties.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And
you
this
have
is
to know what that criteria is.
this is kind of less for us, and more for the select board or the council that we use, the attorney that we use, which is if we kind of willy-nilly let anybody be an interested person, we are opening the town up to potentially more environmental court litigation, because anybody who's been an interested party at the DRB could potentially then appeal our decision. So we should just,
Yeah, I mean, I could be wrong. My understanding is we don't determine who's an interested party, but
right,
the environmental board does. So like
the
we
environmental
could,
court, yeah, they
yeah,
would.
the environmental
But
court.
but the town would still then have to like respond and with a motion to dismiss that this person isn't an interested party. Like it still costs the town money.
Right. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, so.
So, do we want to explicitly say that only interested parties, only people whom the board thinks meets the definition of an interested party may speak?
I think it's more that the person has to say, yes, you've given me this definition. I
Mhm.
believe I'm an interested party. I
Mhm.
think there's a difference between that and just letting somebody who doesn't think that they meet the definition then
Mm.
give testimony.
So I'm just reading this up to myself. The board shall not make any determination as to interested person status. So here's, I guess, this sentence. As these rules do not differentiate between persons with interested person status and those without, anyone seeking to participate in a proceeding may do so. So that, I think, Rachel, I'm thinking you might edit that sentence.
Yeah, I'm happy to work wordsmith on that one a little bit.
That would be great. I had several question marks by section 7F. Also, it mentions appeals of administrative officer decisions, which are sort of like what, as I understand it, would be
That would be John. That would be an appeal of John's decision to us.
oh, I see. Okay. Yep. Yep.
Who's John?
Oh, he's the zoning administrator,
Okay, thank you.
John McCullough. Yeah,
Good. Thank you
Sorry.
for doing that, Rachel.
yeah.
Rachel, does this capture the point that only those who define themselves as an interested
Yeah,
person
that we would
would
need
give
them in
them?
the record as saying, I believe I'm an
Yeah.
interest. Yeah. And I can, yeah, I can work on after the meeting.
Okay.
some-
Yeah. Got a little note there. Okay.
Good.
Yeah.
Is this section just saying, hey, anyone may come to the meeting and want to speak? Doesn't mean they're an interested person. The board's not going to try and determine that at the meeting.
Right. But again, if they don't think they're an interested person, what that does is protects the town from them then participating and appealing, even though like we let them participate, but then they don't have the status to appeal
Sure.
to the,
Okay.
yeah.
And a person may identify themselves as an interested person, give testimony. We may have reservations about whether they actually meet the definition, but we would let them give testimony.
Yep.
And then should that person choose to appeal, it would be the court, environmental court, that would say, well, actually, you're not an interested person. Sorry, I'm
No,
not going to
we'll
hear
allow-
from you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna go back up to definitions. So we've gone through, so here's G is all the interested person definition.
Yeah, and I just pasted the statute into the chat, Willis, so
Okay.
that somebody can do a side by side of those, make sure we're not
Okay.
missing anything.
Thank you.
But it looks like it's basically word for word.
Okay, great.
And if you, and just to stylistically to indent under the uppercase letter,
Yeah.
tab them.
Um, um, and we have meeting defined, so quorum. So it is, I'm trying to remember if quorum is defined. So the question I think sometimes isn't clear to me is a quorum include the alternates? Like, for example, we have 7 members and 2 alternates.
So the statute doesn't actually conceive of alternates. That's something that I guess our town has come up with, and I like that we have alternates.
Yeah,
But I think that probably we should be cautious and say that it's a quorum of members.
what are we called? Regular members? Or I don't know. I don't know. This may be too wordy, but
Hey, Bob.
Well, because if an alternate member is part of a hearing, they're sort of not an alternate at that time.
Right, they're in that hearing. So there's two different things you have to keep in mind for DRBs. So one is we have to have a quorum even to hold a meeting. But the second is that we have to have a majority of the members agreeing on the decision. Right, so if we're a board of 7, so we have a quorum of 4, right? Because that's a
Mhm.
majority of our 7. So if we have 4 people there, but then only 3 people vote in favor of a certain action, we haven't acted. We would have to have all 4 of those people in agreement to have acted. So one of the benefits of having alternates is if we have a quorum of 4 members, but we have 2 alternates with us, then we have 6 potential votes. And as long as we have 4 votes, we have been able to take an action. Does that make sense to people? It's nuts, but that's what the statute calls for, is a majority of the board has to agree in order to act, not just a majority of the quorum present.
That's complicated. I think it needs
Yeah,
to be written up
Okay.
as Rachel described it.
Great,
Thank you, Rachel.
you're welcome.
so just for my own memory,
Mhm.
not that it would necessarily go here, but majority of those in the hearing must agree for the board to take action.
No, because we have a board of 7, we have to have 4 people in agreement to take action.
Right, so if you only have 4 members participating and your alternates can't be available, then you have to have all 4 vote in order to pass the action.
Yep.
If you-
Shouldn't we just sort of say that, that the board can use alternate, members to fill the hearing? So that we have,
Mhm.
you know, no more than 7, but, alternates should actually be appointed at the beginning of a hearing and used. Is that
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah, so that is down here. There's a whole section, an alternate. So maybe we'll dive into that, might inform our discussion.
Yep.
So the select board appoints up to 3 who may temporarily serve as DRB members. So I guess that's sort of the concept there, is they're filling in and then they
Yeah.
become a DRB member.
Yep.
This alphabetical roster I'd like to come back to.
Yeah.
But to Toby's point, here, this is really what you're saying, Rachel, right? A majority of the members of the DRB present and vote. No, that's appointing. It's not
Oh,
for the
no, yeah, no,
decision.
that's basically the idea of, if you, Willa, are not on top of getting
Right.
our alternates to a hearing, then we can all
You
override you
can,
and
good.
make us get alternates to a hearing.
I'm glad there's some backup here, right?
Um,
Um,
so maybe
So,
what we're
yeah.
gonna do is add something about how when alternates are appointed for hearing, they count towards both the quorum and the calculation of whether a majority of the board has acted towards whether we have the 4 votes that we need.
Well, tonight,
you-
quorum.
Yeah.
And towards count of majority needed for action. Obviously, this needs working the words, but that's the concept.
Yeah.
So this is sort of in the weeds, but this alphabetical roster, I mean, I
This
feel
seems
that's
unnecessary
too
to me.
prescriptive.
Yeah.
I mean, the practice that I've experienced has been like, we have a meeting, who can make it? You can't make it. Is there an alternate who can make it? It's not, and right now we only have one alternate, so.
Yeah, I think we can get rid of the alphabetical order. My guess is that that was created to like not have the same alternate in every single hearing.
Yeah.
But I just don't think that we really have the luxury of that at the moment. So,
I think we could sort of trust
yeah,
this. I think we could trust this board and future boards to be mindful of who's an alternate.
yeah.
Are other people comfortable with striking this?
Yes, get rid of A.
I am. I think we should strike it.
Yep,
Okay,
I agree.
okay. Done. That's so satisfying. Okay. How are people doing? Are you nauseous yet? Going back and forth? Okay, I just realized what time it is.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go back up, see if we can do a little more in our few minutes left. Okay. So going back to definitions, we're at I, what a proceeding is, business meeting or public hearing, executive deliberative. I think that's pretty clear. An official act means any legislative, administrative performed by any board member. So that's important. So with that, here's a question. That does not include an alternate unless they have been appointed to serve on a hearing. Participate means offer oral or written testimony, evidence, or statement. I don't know, this of concern seems extraneous to me, but just
Yeah, you can fill that out.
Yeah,
public deliberations, weighing, examining, discussing in a public proceeding expressly includes. So I think that makes sense, but I'm not sure. I want to read and see where do we refer to that in this document, and I'm not remembering anything.
I think that's the counterpart to the deliberative session.
Right, so
Yeah.
you
Right,
can
the
either have
deliberative
them,
session is
yeah,
not in
either
public.
deliberative, either private or public, and that's this definition.
Yeah.
Sorry, Toby, would you repeat what you just said?
Yeah, so definition of deliberative sessions are either public or private, and this is the public definition
Public definition.
of the deliberative session. So it just makes a definition of what you would do if you were in a public deliberative session.
And earlier in our rules, we're saying we won't have public deliberative sessions.
Right, so
Correct.
shouldn't we be able to strike this?
We should.
That's
I mean,
what
that
I'm
is
wondering.
still a thing that is allowed in the statute for whatever that's worth. So even if we're not gonna do it, it is a thing that's allowed, that we're allowed to do.
But if we list it here, doesn't it make it sound like we're open to the idea? But really,
Yeah, that's
we're,
true. It does.
right, we're really saying we're not gonna do it, but we'll list it.
Yeah, you're right. I'm convinced.
Wow.
Candy, I agree with Candy. Other thoughts? Are people comfortable with striking this?
I am.
We are going to read this over carefully, and we might get some, opinion from the league. So then here's the public hearing definition, quasi judicial session. I'm going to propose. I think that's pretty straightforward. And then recuse definition. Oh, there it is, because of a real or perceived. Should have read that more carefully last night. So it's 6:58. We agreed that we would only meet for an hour. But we did get through, we're on page 3 of 11, but we did tackle some later sections. for process, my thinking is I could clean this up. Rachel was gonna do some wording. If Rachel gets that to me, I could send it out to everybody. And here's a question, I don't know. Can we, I mean, we can't really do any work as a group through email because we're supposed to have, our meetings are public, so we really can't sort of over email say, what about that or this?
I think that's right.
Yeah. So I guess at our November meeting, we'll just plug away. So Rachel, do you feel like 10 days or so, 2 weeks, you could get me something and then I could get it out to people more quickly and
Yeah, if you could send me the version we've now got marked up that you've from
Yep.
tonight, I can certainly get it
okay,
out in the days.
great.
That's
I'm
okay.
thinking I'll do some very simple minutes.
Mhm.
Just who was here and what agenda items we addressed.
I think that's fine. I don't think we need to include in the minutes any of the details of our revision.
Phew. Good. Good, thanks.
One word smithing, my inclination is to change his or her to their, you just use,
Yes,
and
good.
Yes.
people are comfortable with that.
Yes,
So I'm gonna go through that, make all the change, just make those changes without using track changes, just so it's easier to read.
good.
And I'm gonna stop sharing the screen. So much easier, I can see everybody. So last minute thoughts, questions, comments from the group before we adjourn?
I assume we don't have any more applications where we need to schedule a deliberate or a hearing. Okay,
Correct.
Not yet.
I did hear through the rumor mill that there may be a development proposed in the spring on Culver Hill Road.
Okay.
So, but that's all I know, so.
Well, I hope there will be a lot of them.
yeah, we need it.
We need them.
All right, well, thank you, everybody. It's good to have Tony and Phil on board. I feel like we have a bench now, right?
Yeah,
Glad to be here.
good depth.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Okay,
Thank you, everybody. Good
have a
night.
good rest of the
Have a good
evening.
night.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.